Hey y'all, and welcome back to Katie on the Flip Side. Let me just explain to you about my face right quick so that you don't think there's just something wrong with me. If you don't follow me on Instagram, long story short, I have a staph infection in my face. This happened to Cullen back in April, and his got massive and swollen up and he could barely open his eye, and he was in the hospital for 3 days. Luckily, I knew what was coming with mine and I got it taken care of quickly. I'm on antibiotics and it'll be fine. So I'm sorry you have to look at it. I'm just gonna have a red dot on my face, so excuse it. Okay, so we're back here in the car again for a car chat this week because I have something that I want to talk to you guys about. And I think part of this, me being here, is the reason I want to talk to y'all and what is going on with everything right now. So you may have seen that the title of this video is Preventing Relapse, and there was a little graphic that I saw in one of my groups the other day that says, if we're not working on our recovery, we're working on a relapse. And I know I have a number of people here who are self-professed people pleasers who have realized they're dealing with codependency issues with people pleasing. They're a spouse of an addict, they're a parent of an addict, they're involved in some type of relationship with somebody who is struggling, and that has affected them in a great way. Something that I have learned through this past 6 months or however long it's been is that I, as the spouse, need recovery as much as Cullen does. And there's as much behind what I need to go through as what he does, just in a completely different way. So when I first started making these car videos and talking to you guys about everything, I was actively working on my internal mental processing of things. Not that I haven't been doing that the whole time, but it was when I was really discovering things and learning things. And then it moved on from discovery to putting some things in place, taking care of myself, figuring out what worked best for me for my schedule. I started waking up earlier. I started getting things organized, losing weight, making my health, my wellness, mental and physical, a priority. And that is a healthy thing to do. So as time progressed and as I was starting new healthy habits for myself, discovering about boundaries and that it was okay for me to express what I needed and what I wanted, and to be able to set boundaries to protect myself and my kids and my environment and my household and everything, I gained confidence and I got comfortable with those things in the environment and in the setting that I was in, which was a bit of a chaotic setting. If you have no idea what's going on, I'll leave a playlist, but long story short, Cullen has been dealing with addiction for a while and just recently admitted the problem and talked about how he needed help and is making some major changes in his life. Obviously, that is a major, huge, wonderful, positive thing in our lives right now. It's been a big blessing to me having my husband back to some extent. If you've ever dealt with a situation with a significant other with addiction, you know that they're just not themselves when they're in active addiction. And you know that when they stop using, a lot of times you see glimpses of the real them or the old them or whatever, but it's not like everything is just magically perfect again. It's not like trust just returns like that. It's not like emotional connection and communication and everything returns just like that. I knew that. I knew to expect that as far as our relationship goes, but what I didn't expect is that I would need to relearn a lot of things that I had learned. A lot of times in life, you learn things, you implement them, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, you need to learn them again. Either you start slacking off, you start not doing what you're supposed to do, what you know you should do, and you gotta start over. But that doesn't mean starting from scratch. Sometimes it means you started out here initially and you went here and you were like doing good, and then you maybe drop back here. So you're not dropping quite down as low as you were before, but it's kind of, recovery is not a straight line for anybody. It's ups and downs and it's learning, and especially when somebody else is involved. So I had learned really well how to detach myself from Cullen's problem and from the things that he needed to do to fix himself, and focus on myself and what I needed to do to be productive in my job, be productive in my personal life, and be productive as a mom. Was still working on being productive as a friend and a daughter and a sister and all the other things. It's always a work in progress. So it's been kind of a hard week for me. I think a little bit of it has to do with the fact that our kids have had the flu and they've been home from school sick. So it hasn't left much time for me to like actually think. So in one of the groups that I'm in, I saw somebody post a little graphic of signs of a codependent relapse, and it really hit me hard of oh man, like I first of all haven't thought about it in some of these ways, and second of all, dang, I'm like, I see that I'm starting to slip. And the further along I feel like I get in my recovery from codependency, from living the life of a spouse of somebody with an addiction problem, the more I see different things, and the more I realize, like, oh my gosh, this whole time, like even as I've been going through all this, I thought this was normal, and it's not. And I guess I shouldn't use the word normal. Maybe I should use the word healthy, because what is normal, right? So I've suddenly hit a point where I am realizing a lot of things. One of those things being that I have completely numbed my emotions lately, not with substances or drugs, like is the situation with Cullen. When I was just listening to his podcast from a couple days ago, I was listening to the part where he and the lady that they were interviewing was talking about coming off of drugs and all of a sudden feeling emotions and having to deal with life without the drug to numb the emotions, and how it was very overwhelming to suddenly feel all these emotions. And I didn't realize how much I had been doing it or why I had been doing it. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I've been covering up and hiding and burying a lot of my emotions, and learned how to basically turn off any emotion that I feel to avoid conflict. So thinking back to when he was in active addiction and when things were really bad, if he said something that made me really mad, I had taught myself to keep quiet and not argue back, not say what I felt or what I thought, and not allow myself to feel that anger, because I knew that if I allowed myself to feel the anger, then I would most likely speak my mind. There are definitely times where it's a good thing to hold your tongue, where it's a good thing not to engage in an argument, especially when somebody's under the influence. There's literally no reason to try to have an argument or a healthy discussion with somebody when they're under the influence of something. And I heard this so much in the groups I was in and in the things that I read as I was going through this. And I was like, yeah, but then when am I supposed to talk to him? Because when is he not, you know? So we would often have discussions or talks about things when he was not completely sober. I learned to turn off a lot of things, I'm realizing, like the anger, upset, resentment, all the things, just so that I could keep peace. Because if he wasn't going to change and I wasn't going to leave, then at least we could have peace, right? And in some cases, that's actually a survival moment that you have to get to. It's a survival skill that you have to learn just to get through the day, just to get through some of the situations that happen. And to be honest, I don't think that's a terrible thing in some situations. I know that it's not healthy in general, but I do know that it is something that is sometimes necessary in order to just save yourself mentally in some moments. But those emotions have to come back on. And as the past couple weeks have gone by, when things have been a little bit more normal, I would say stably unstable, because neither of us are 100% like used to living the life that we're living now. As the weeks have gone by, I've gradually, subconsciously allowed myself to start feeling feelings, allow myself to be upset if something happens, allow myself to feel frustrated, and being in a place of just not knowing what boundaries look like, what a routine looks like, what any of that looks like, and what should be expected in a healthy family. Because we've lived in this dysfunction for such a long time. It's hard to explain, and I'm sure I've probably lost a bunch of people that started watching this video by now. For those of y'all that are still here, thank you for sticking with me. Some weeks I need to just talk, and this is my journal, this is my journey, and I love being able to share it with y'all and also to be able to look back on for myself. So there are some signs that I saw in myself after I saw this little graphic that I mentioned forever ago in this video about a codependent slip or a relapse or slipping back into your old ways. And let me just tell you a few of them. The first one is you start giving advice. For the past couple of months, when I had found myself being so much better about detaching and not letting Cullen's problems feel like they were my problems, not letting myself try to dictate his recovery, I was doing so much better about this because it was stuff he had to learn. But once things flipped and he was in a situation where he was wanting to talk to me about things, he was wanting to hear my opinions on things, I let myself slip back into not just giving advice when he asked, but giving advice when it wasn't asked. And when I saw that pop up on this little graphic, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was like a codependent thing and like a thing that was an issue. But yeah, it is. If you're giving somebody advice and they haven't asked, sometimes you do have like a great experience. So maybe you're like in the grocery store and you're trying to reach something on the top shelf and you can't reach it, and somebody's like, hey, here's a stool. There's a stool right next to you. You could use that stool. Well, that's helpful advice, you know, but it's the type of things where it might interrupt somebody's process of recovery if you go in throwing in a step or an option or a thing to do that's like down the line from where they even are and they're not ready yet. So basically, found myself slipping back into that. The next one is not saying what you really mean, and good gracious, did I realize that lately. And good gracious, does it cause a lot of fights? Because I tiptoe around trying to make sure that I don't say something to offend somebody, or I don't say something that's gonna like put Cullen in an awkward position, or if I need something and I feel like it's gonna interfere with his schedule or whatever, I just don't say it, or I kind of try to word it a little bit more, whatever, I don't even know. I try to kind of word it a little bit more like perfectly. And so I don't say what I really mean, and then it doesn't come across clear, and then that just causes a problem. You should be able to say what you mean what you say, and don't be mean when you say it. I think we used to say that in my house all the time as a kid. But yeah, that's definitely been an issue. Number 3, you think you know best, and that honestly has happened too. It's a hard one to accept, because who wants to admit that? Who wants to admit like, yeah, I think I know best all the time about all these things? But it's hard where you're in a position where the other person is telling you, like, I realized I had screwed up, or I realized I did something wrong. So you're like, yeah, let me tell you why you did and how you can fix it. Like, it's not helpful. Number 4 is getting in other people's business. This is one I feel like I've done a pretty good job of outside of like me, Cullen, and the kids. I literally don't want to hear somebody else's drama, because then I'm going to find myself giving advice. Then I'm going to find myself wanting to help in a way that is probably not needed. I think it's been easier because I've been so wrapped up in everything going on with me. I'm like, I can't handle anybody else's drama. I got enough of my own. But getting in other people's business definitely is relevant to mine and Cullen's relationship. So me getting into his business of, what are you doing for your recovery? What'd you read today? What'd you listen to today? Asking those questions and worrying about trying to do things for him. Number 5 is the focus being on perfection and not progress. That's hard too, especially coming right out of when things are turning around and I know he's doing so much better, and it's hard. It's so hard not to just suddenly want everything to be perfect, but it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be progress and not perfection. Whether or not he's using or not, there's still a lot of like underlying relationship issues, trust issues, communication, emotional, everything that you can think of that needs to be worked on. It's not going to be perfect to begin with, and we're just going to have to be patient with each other and accept progress. Number 6 is you volunteer without thinking, and to be honest, like, that is not really a problem for me right now. I have so much on my plate mentally and emotionally that I'm probably volunteering to help with things less than I should, but just hearing that come out of my mouth right now, I'm like, no, I'm not, because I'm taking on only the amount that I can handle right now, and that's okay. There's going to be seasons in your life when you can't help everybody, but there's going to be a season in your life where things will be more stable and you will be able to be the one helping somebody else. So for right now, that one I think I'm good on. Number 7 is neglecting your needs for someone else. I definitely see that. I definitely have found myself, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to make excuses for it, even talking about it, because I feel like it's like, well, I'm going to sleep in a little bit more in the morning because I stayed up a little bit later because Cullen and I were talking about something important, or he was working on something and I know he's having a hard time, so I stayed up later so I could clean up the kitchen, or, you know, those types of things. And it's so hard because there are going to be times when you have to make sacrifices as a spouse, as a mom, but it's like one little thing happens and then it turns into a snowball of, I honestly haven't worked out in about a week. The past couple of days, honestly, it's been because of my face, because this thing hurts when I like move too much. I've been waking up at 6 instead of 5, which I know is still early, but I was really loving waking up at 5 and it was really good for me. But I just haven't been able to make myself go to bed earlier because I don't know. It's just weird. I'm like, I don't want Cullen to feel guilty, or I don't want to just like leave him with everything to do. I don't know. A lot of it comes down to neglecting my needs for someone else. Even right now, before I filmed this video, he was still working on editing, and this is the time that I kind of usually film my videos, is on Wednesdays. And I was like, okay, I gotta like do this before it gets dark, and how much longer do you have to edit? And kind of had written off in my head, like, well, I guess I just won't make a video this week. And then I was like, no, I'm gonna make, like, I wanna make a video. I wanna talk about this stuff, and I'm not just gonna not do it because he didn't get his stuff done in time, if that makes sense. I don't know. I feel bad even saying that, because I'm like, well, I could have filmed it another time too. But those are the thoughts that it's like, you just, I don't know. Whoa, this is deep. This is deeper than it probably seems to y'all. Okay, number 8, worrying about others impacts your sleep. I have gotten a lot better about this, for sure. Last night I didn't sleep very well for some reason, which makes me like wonder, am I like slipping back again? Because I was like, well, Cullen hasn't come to bed yet. Where's he? What's he doing? Why is he not in bed yet? But this one used to be huge for me when we were right in the middle of all of the active addiction. I was basically just like not letting myself sleep because I was worrying, or because I felt like I needed to be available if like he called, or if he came to bed, or like if he didn't come to bed, then I needed to make sure I woke up so I could wake him up and find out if he fell asleep in the chair or wherever, so I could like make him get in bed. But through my journey, I have gotten so much better about that, and have been able to fully detach myself, that when I need sleep, I know that's important to me, it's an important thing, and I'm going to go to sleep. In any issue that if he needs help with something and is that urgent, he can wake me up. Otherwise, I have to take care of myself, or I become a grumpy bee when I don't get sleep, and it's not good for me, and it's not good for my kids or for anybody. Number 9 is you care too much about what other people think. And I actually heard, I truly don't remember where this was, on some podcast I was listening to the other day, but somebody was talking about slipping back into codependency, and how the way they could tell is when they started worrying about what some random person passing by on the street thought. Now, that one is hard to do when you're on YouTube, because we get so much feedback that you wouldn't get as an average person. So I'm not even talking about in that area. I'm talking about worrying about dumb little things like, well, if I don't get dressed and put on clothes that are nice, then Cullen's just gonna think I'm being lazy and I'm not gonna do anything today. Say there's somebody like walking by the car as I'm getting in my car at the grocery store. Well, if I don't hurry and start the car and like back out, then I'm gonna inconvenience them, because they might be waiting on my parking spot, or they might need to like walk by or pull in a different way or something. And so like, oh, I need to hurry, I need to, like, that's not your problem. Like, it is nice to be considerate, but you can way overthink things and way worry about what other people think. Or like walking down an aisle in the store and just finding yourself going, oh, that girl probably thinks this shirt's really ugly, or something like that. Like, what does it matter what the girl in the aisle at the Target thinks? When your mind starts being flooded with worry or concern, or just even thoughts of what other people are thinking, that's a big sign. And I've definitely found that it is for me. And number 10 is probably a huge one right now. You can't let go of what other people do. So I've talked about this before, about feeling like somebody's bad actions or bad behaviors or bad decisions were actually my decisions, which you won't probably fully understand unless you've been there. So when that's my line of thinking, it's really hard for me to let it go. To let go of his issues when they aren't mine, if that makes any sense. This one's really hard to explain right now, so I'm gonna have to like discuss it further later. But basically, I just wanted to check in with y'all. Those of y'all who are struggling with this, who have been through this, I would love to hear your stories of how you've overcome it. Or if you are walking through a similar situation as me, how do you keep yourself grounded? How do you readjust to life in recovery versus life in active addiction, knowing that the tables could turn at any minute? Of course, the prayer and the hope and the plan is that the tables don't turn, and that we continue recovering. Cullen continues recovering. I continue recovering, and everything stays honky-dory. The truth is, your mind only knows what it's learned in the past, and it's really hard to convince your mind anything otherwise. So it's really hard for me to just accept that things are going to be great. It's really hard for me to learn how to reprocess emotions when things have been going great for the past couple of weeks, and then there's one tiny little argument that suddenly brings a flood of all the emotions from a past much worse argument. Not even one in particular, but multiple, just the feeling of those situations, and learning how to get through that in the present moment and overcome the anxiety and the tension and like the actual physical and mental internal fear. It's a lot, guys, and it's a really deep video, and I really want to do more positive, upbeat things about the awesome things that I'm accomplishing in my life. I didn't realize that this would kind of throw me down a different track of needing to kind of refocus on going hardcore into relearning how to think and how to live, with the situation being a lot different than it was just a month ago, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Definitely different from a year ago. So thank y'all for being here with me, for being patient with me, and for always being so supportive. I am so appreciative of all of your awesome comments and your sweet encouragement. It's super, super helpful for me. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. I am getting back to doing this KonMari thing. If everybody can get over the flu and the staph infection and everything. It's been a crazy week. We have had children home, and they're going to be home for like still a couple more days. So once I get some time, once I get some house to myself time, it's on Marie Kondo. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you back here on my channel and on Instagram, KatiePie07, Sunday night for a live stream. It is usually around 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. See you then. Bye.